my name is Dan Clancy, and I am what you would call a professional musician, singer, songwriter, which means I'm getting paid. And you're listening to Talking Blues.
So, I saw you before Christmas playing with Pretzel Logic,
Yes.
and it was a fabulous show. Between the sets, after the first set, you put on headphones. I don't know if you remember
Hmm.
this.
Yes.
And you're walking around in the intermission listening to something, and I was curious to find out, is he listening to an audiobook? Is he learning a new song? Is he learning a song for the next set? Can I ask you what you were doing?
Absolutely, and you were spot on because what I was doing, and I very seldom do that, but the leader of Pretzel Logic, Peter, had asked me the day before. He said, "Dan, can we put this song in the show?" And I always say yes. I always say yes and figure out how to do it. So basically, uh, I said, "Yeah, sure, no problem." And then I thought, okay, this is good. It's in the second set. So I had a chance to listen to it a couple times through the day and then a couple of times on the drive in. But still, the music can be, depending on the selection, can be quite complex as far as the count ins and when I come in and what the phrasing is and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, that's what I was doing. I was listening to it to make sure that I'm counting properly. And yeah.
Is lyrics an issue or not? Like, are you learning the lyrics at this time or not?
I kind of learned some of them, and then I kind of have a little support. Once in a
Right.
while, I'll have things on an iPad, and I'll glance over and see, okay, there, I know where I am, that sort of thing. But it was more about the counting on bars and phrasing, because some of the count-ins are a little more complex. Like, for example, like a song like Babylon Sisters.
Right.
The counting when you come in and that sort of thing is it's not like your standard 1, 2, 3, 4. There's funny time signatures, that you have to follow. And the melodies can be quite complex too, that Donald Fagen likes to do. And I like to try if I can to be as close as I can be on inflections and where's the vibrato, right? So I'll study it and I'll underline certain back ends of words that Donald Fagen would sing. That's the only place there's a vibrato. The rest is sung straight. So I like to try to pay as much honor to his renditions as I can.
Right. So, for
It's
anybody
fun.
who doesn't know, Pretzel Logic is a band that plays Steely Dan music really,
Yeah.
really well. Um, and what you say, what you try to do, I think you accomplish by replicating the singing as good as it gets.
Oh,
Does
great.
that mean that
Thanks.
you guys don't rehearse that song? You're playing it.
Yeah, we just do like the first time I joined the group was, I think, what, 2.5 years ago, I think, because the other singers were busy and get scheduling. So what we find is with a lot of tribute bands, there are a number of subs, people who fill
Right.
in for different positions. So in Pretzel Logic, I think I was second sub, and Peter called me on a recommendation. Peter's the Peter Graham, Peter Mifsud. He's the band leader, and he said, "Can you come to my place and we'll just run through a couple of songs and just so I can hear what you sound like." And so I went to his home, and Carmela Long, who sings with Glass Tiger, she was there, and so was John Finley Frazier, the guitar player, playing an acoustic guitar. And so the four of us just sat in a circle for about an hour and a half, and I just sang some harmonies and a couple of leads. And he says, "Okay, we're good to go." And then they sent me 25 songs to learn. And then within about 3 weeks, I started. And so no rehearsal. We just show up and just go.
Wow.
Yes.
And I mean, we're talking pretty high end musicians in that band.
Oh, so I pinch myself. They're incredibly talented, all of them. It's real. I tell Peter, I said, I pinch myself. This is an honor to be singing with you. It's an honor for me to be working with anyone. I'm so grateful. I'm very grateful. I mean, even my own little configuration with my duo or trio or band or whatever, I'm just so happy that that people enjoy working with me and that I get the opportunity to do that. It's a real pleasure. It really is.
Well, um, as I said, when I look at your bio, I think you started very early singing in church. I
Mhm.
think it was six or something. I wonder, when you start that early, do you have a love of music at that point? When did you love singing? Did it come really early?
Yeah, I think so. I believe so. I tell you, I had a great love for spiritual music, right? At the time, growing up, because I started in a choir, or my mother sang in the choir. She would bring me there, and I would sing at a young age. And then I think I was around 12, 13 when I met my friend Dave Comel, and he and I were in the same church. And so we took it upon ourselves to start a church folk group. So he and I both played acoustic guitar because I started playing when I was around 12, 13. And I think the guitar back there, this the guitar that I played on right there. I don't know if you can see it.
Wow.
It's that acoustic there. Yeah. So anyway, so that was the first one that I took the club. So Dave and I, we would start this folk group up. I think there was maybe seven of us. There was a drummer, there was a bass player. It was in a church, and that sort of thing. So we embraced the music for that particular time, and we just carried it on for years until when we turned like 15. We went to high school. I went to high school first. He joined me the next year, the same high school. We started getting into learning the songs by the Everly Brothers and things like that because our voices blend really well together. And we just keep on growing what it is we did. Plus, we still did the church music and led the folk groups. And we just kind of gained a local sort of notoriety in the community because we started playing. I think I was just turned 17 and Dave was 16. So we played in our first coffee house locally and we got paid. And I went, whoa, this is insane. I got paid. I think we got paid $75 or something, which is a lot of money.
Yeah, for
You know,
sure.
so I went, wow, this is pretty good. And I think that's when I sort of thought, okay, this is kind of interesting. Maybe I could consider this as some kind of a career, or at least like something to do on the side, right? But I really had a great love for music that we were learning. We were learning. We're learning how to play the guitar, and you just kind of it just sort of it started to flow, and it was just something that we both loved, and then we sort of parted ways for some time because Dave went one direction, I went one direction, and we met at college together, which is kind of fun. He followed me to college, and yeah, it's just a nice friendship. Anyway, fast forward, Dave and I now annually play three or four locations in around where we live, which is so awesome. It's just great. And he still is doing spiritual music. God bless him. And he says there's always a chair open for you. But we get together and we perform locally, and yeah, we do all the stuff like Everly Brothers, Seals and Crofts, Jim Croce, the Beatles, Simon and Garfunkel, all of that, right? So it's quite a fun thing for
I
us.
wonder if whether it be spiritual music or Everly Brothers music, are there songs that you used to play back then that you still do?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yes, we do. We do
Wow.
that old catalog that we did back in the 70s. We still do it now, and believe it or not, people really like it. So I don't know. I think maybe it's a combination of the music, and so our audience is a little older too, but their grandkids come and that sort of thing, and their children. So, as we do outdoor festivals and we do indoor fundraisers and that sort of thing, right? So it's just something that we've come to really revisit as one of the things that I'm able to do, and one of the things that he's able to do. So it's just great. He's a great person, and I'm just grateful that he still wants to explore and experiment and do music. And we actually learned some new songs by artists who have that ability to um, embrace vocal harmony And yeah, so we still do that too. We're learning some new songs now to put in, so it's a little more current, mixed up with some of the traditional songs that we do.
When did you think that this was your calling, that you wanted to pursue music as a career?
Okay, that's an interesting question. I think Mako, where it was I I decided I wanted to pursue music in high school because Dave and I were actually performing quite a bit on the local scene, on the coffee house scene at the time, and it was before bars, that sort of thing. Although we did do one, I think, just before I went to college. We started getting into that. So I went to college in 1 year, and it was at Fanshawe College in London. And the program there was music industry arts. So I wanted to become a producer. And so that was the line of academic that I followed. And met a lot of great people, some who were connected with Lighthouse, which is really sort of odd, right? Yeah, Bill Seddon, who was an engineering instructor, God rest his soul, at Fanshawe College at the time. And so, anyway, he worked at Thunder Sound, and I think he engineered a couple of the first Lighthouse albums. So,
Wow.
but that's how I got into to thinking, okay, I really kind of like this. It's fun. But so I finished my first year, and I sang at a lot of weddings. I used to do a lot of wedding singing, and like as a guitarist and a vocalist. So I would sing music while the guests were entering the backyard or the synagogue or the church or wherever the wedding might have been held, and play some music maybe for 20 minutes, a half hour leading up to the actual beginning of the celebration, the wedding celebration, where the bride comes down the aisle, right? And so what I would do is I'd go to their homes, the couples, and work out the music for their special day, and between like 10 and 14 songs we'd select for their day. And so I used to do that. I did that a lot. I think I probably sang at 400 weddings. But what I did was I singing at one um, north of Aurelia. And as it happened, this is the end of my first year. It was the summer of my second year going into college. And Skip Prokop and his wife were at the wedding. And so after the wedding, he approached me because I knew the family whose wedding I was singing for. And he came up to me, and I was like awestruck, of course, right? This is Skip Prokop from Lighthouse and the Poppers, right? This guy's a legend. And so he said to me, he said, I really liked what you did. And his wife was wonderful. And, Marcia, she was so nice. And he said, if I ever, like, I'm on a sabbatical right now, I'm doing some production work. He says, but if I ever put another group together, would you be interested in singing in it? And I said, oh, I'd be honored. So as fate would have it, I went back to college in September for the second year of my schooling. And I got a phone call in January from Skip saying, okay, I'm starting the band up. Would you want to join? So I said yes, and I quit college.
Wow.
Yeah.
Skip sang as well, did he not?
Oh, yes, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, the story behind that with Skip is interesting. How he became more of a lead singer was they were doing the album with Pretty Lady on it,
Right.
the Can You Feel It album. And what happened was Bob was unwell. So Bobby McBride, right, who's the voice that everybody
Right.
remembers. He's a strong voice. So when Bobby was not well, and he left and went back home, and then so Skip and Ralph Cole ended up singing all the vocals on that entire album. So that's why Skip is singing lead vocals on Pretty Lady. That was supposed to be Bobby originally, Bobby McBride. So yeah.
So I want just going back to that experience of being a, and I don't know if it's correct to call you a wedding singer, but
Yeah,
doing those wedding
sure.
gigs. Um, Tell me about what you learned from that experience. Because I mean, I presume you get paid pretty well doing wedding gigs. It's a different kind of a gig than playing in coffee houses or bars. But what did you get out of that as for you as a musician?
A huge learning curve, only because from many ends, musically and people wise, because you would basically you'd be contacted by different churches, like I would go out to, or synagogues, or even wedding shows. Like I did record a wedding album, and then I'd go to a bridal show, and then I had a table set up, and I would sell these CDs, and I would also perform at the bridal show. And so when I was there, my wife was with me, and she would be at the table, and people would come up, and they would want to book me to sing at their weddings. So that's kind of how that came. So you kind of created a little mini business from it. But the thing I liked about it so much is like I take a lot of contemporary songs and I would ask couples, what songs would you like at your wedding? And so I learned a whole bunch of different songs of different genres in order to sort of to play to get the guests feeling relaxed and comfortable before the celebration. But you also had to follow certain guidelines based on whatever organized faith you were involved with. So I would work with the pastors, the reverends, whoever were in charge of the actual celebration and ceremonies. So I think so. You'd have to kind of walk a fine line and you'd be liaisoning on behalf of the couple about what they would like, but staying within the construct of what was acceptable and respectful and that sort of thing, right? And so yeah, I learned a lot about that, and also learned a lot about people. Like you get a chance to sort of what I do is I set up an appointment with the couple 3 months in advance, go to their home or their parents' home. They'd all sit around in the living room, and then I would have my guitar and I'd go through a whole bunch of songs and say, what would you like? And I say, okay, I can learn that for you. I can learn that for you. And basically that's how I approached that particular part of the musical landscape that I was working in.
But it's also not about you. It's not like, hey, listen to me, right? Like, there's that fine
No.
line of entertaining people, but not being the main entertainment.
Yes, it's exactly right. That's it, Mako. It's about the atmosphere. It's about me helping to create an atmosphere to bring whoever was in attendance closer to the couple. You know what I mean? And closer to the experience. And yeah, and so that's how I approached it anyway. I was there on behalf of them, trying to make them feel good about their love for one another as a couple. Yeah.
Um, I have to ask, was there any really crazy stories that came out of that
Oh,
experience?
yeah, yes, there were. There were.
Any you can
Like,
share?
oh yeah, people have said to me, Dan, you could write a book. I said, well, yeah, I know, but I don't have time. I'm running after grandchildren. So, so the funny thing is, there was a couple of things. So back before cell phone days, I remember one wedding I was doing just north of where I live. I live in Whitby, Ontario. So just north of here. Um, and it was an outdoor wedding, I think it was. Anyway, we're at the actual celebration. It was an outdoor thing, and we got to the point where um, I started play. Say it was 1 o'clock. The wedding began, so I'd start singing around 12:30 and play like 7 or 8 songs leading up to it. So it's getting closer to 1 o'clock, and the bride hadn't showed up yet, right? So at first I could hear, because I'm close enough to where the celebration is happening, but I could hear them joking around with the groom to be, she's not going to show up. So, anyway, it wasn't so funny at about 2 minutes to one, and everybody's getting concerned. Then it was 10 minutes after one, and then it was quarter to 20 after one, and I'm still playing. So I always had a backup plan, like lots of music that would continue to play. So I continued playing. So anyway, they're panicking, and because there were no mobile phones back then, we're talking, early 80s at the time. And so anyway, long story short, she finally showed up and she was panicking and oh, the poor kid. I felt so sorry for her. What had happened was the limousine that was bringing her got a flat tire and it just delayed everything by about a half an hour, 40 minutes. So that was one. And then I also did another one, which is pretty funny. It was, I don't know if there's a place in Oshawa, Ontario called Parkwood. Estates, which is Colonel Sam McLaughlin from Buick General Motors. Well, Oshawa is a car making town, or was back in the day. So anyway, we were perform. I was doing it at the place called the Sunken Garden on the outdoor of that, and I went to visit the couple about 2 months in advance, and they were really nice. And actually, the groom to be was more engaged than his fiance was. Really excited and looking forward to it. So anyway, went to play that or perform and help them with their wedding. And so I'm playing again, same sort of thing, right? Playing. The bride's there, blah blah blah, waiting for the groom. Where is the groom? And so anyway, got to the top of the hour. Groom still hadn't arrived. 10 minutes passed. I'm still playing, like Simon and Garfunkel or something, right? And even some instrumental things. I'd play like instrumental songs just in between, just to keep things moving. And so anyway, it was 10 quarter after. Then a gentleman got up to the microphone where I was. He came up to my microphone. He said, "Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, I just thought I would let you know that the wedding is off."
Ugh.
So the wedding got canceled. The groom got cold feet and took off somewhere with his brother. Anyway, it was kind of weird for me. Like, there was gasps all throughout the courtyard. So I kept playing music just to kind of make things calm down while people are talking and whatever. So I played for, like, you'd play like I played probably an hour and a half. And then, and trying to make things calm and relaxed, right? Throughout the course of it. So yeah, those are a couple of crazy stories.
Wow. And did you say, am I getting paid for this? No.
Yeah. Well, no, that was really never, I had like a standard fee that I would charge, like a flat fee
Right,
for
right.
most couples. And it wasn't really that, well, I don't know if it was that much. It was like $300 or something like that. But it's a lot of work because you're going to their homes and, wherever that is. A lot of times I drive to Toronto to their home, and then come back here and then go to the wedding in Toronto, come back here. But I would just charge a flat fee. The one thing I found about my experience with music, I'm really not in it for the money. People seem to think that you're pretty affluent and rich, but most of us who are in the music business, most of us, we're not in it for the money. We do it for the love of what it is,
But,
and what it does, how it brings people together.
right. But you were, I mean, you're lucky that you were still making money because it's a tough business.
Yes. Oh, it
Eh,
very much is.
yeah. And the
And you know
fact
what?
that, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just say, Mako, you're right. And basically, what I've found is two things I always did. I always said yes to everything, everything. Which people ask me, can you do this? Yes. And I try and figure out how to do it. The other thing was always constantly reinventing myself and trying to figure out ways of monetizing, not big, but monetizing what it is I do. That sort of approach is what I've embraced.
If Skip Prokop didn't show up
Mm-hmm.
and ask you to join his band, I know
Mm-hmm.
you would have continued with school, but could you have seen yourself continuing with the work, doing weddings and other events like that?
I probably would have expanded more into my what I was doing on my own, but because at the time what happened was I was also performing at a local bar because not at that time. So I went with Skip. We went on the road for a number of years, and then he left that configuration to rejoin Lighthouse for the reunion concerts at Ontario Place in 1982. The remnants of that band started our own band called Suspect, and we went out on tour on the East Coast when Haywire was happening. You know the band? I don't know if you know the band Haywire.
Yeah,
So they were on the East Coast, and so we used to kind of hang out with them, and we used to hang out with all the bands that were on the circuit at the time, like Saga and a bunch of other bands, right? Because we were on the circuit.
right.
So we kept our thing going. We were writing our own music and trying to get a record deal, and basically uh, that's how things grew. We kept relationships alive even now to this day, where a lot of us are together. And at the time, back then, a couple of people who are now in Lighthouse were involved in that configuration post when Skip left in '80. So yeah, there was kind of this, we just kept it alive. And so when I came off the road from that band, I started working in a local bar um, as a performer at night. So I had a job building furniture in the day, and I perform at night in the pub. So that's basically what I did for
Am I
years.
correct to? I think I read that at some
Yes.
point you got disenchanted with the music industry and decided to
Uh,
stop the playing in the bar circuit or whatever, and just continue work with weddings and church work. I think.
You're correct. I did do that, and that was when I came off the road with this band was Suspect because we'd gone through a number of iterations. I mean, sadly, the band um, we were almost on the very tip of getting a record deal with Warner, Leo Warner at the time, and our manager tragically passed away,
Oh,
and so that just threw us for a loop, and we had no direction at that time, and we were just out on the road playing the club scene, and I was getting tired because I'd been out with Skip continually from say 78 until 1981, just touring, doing whatever we could do. I was getting tired. Yeah, I was getting tired, and I said, you know what? I think I might want to settle down here. Maybe I don't know because I had a girlfriend, and we stayed together, and we're married now. We've been married for forever. So, and I mean that in a good way.
yes.
I didn't mean that in a disparaging way. I pray for her every day. Anyway,
um,
yeah. So I got back into it because then what happened was I started working. We got married. I started working as building custom furniture. That was a job that I had because I was off the road. But you know what? A year in, I was so bummed out. I had to go back in the music because it was calling me.
do
It
you
was
remember the
calling me.
moment?
Yeah, well, because I was doing the weddings, right? And then another circumstance where someone was at the wedding who I knew owned a club in my local area. He approached me after and he says, "You know what, Dan, I'm telling you," he says, "I watched you, singing for this wedding and everything." And he says, the crowd was sort of not paying, unruly or whatever. He says, "I think you could really do a good job at one of our clubs." So he hired me to perform at a new bar that they had bought, and the audience grew so large over the course of a year that he asked if I would be interested in singing at the main bar. And I said, yeah, I'd be fine. I'd love to. So basically, he hired me for that. And I worked there at that bar for 4 nights a week um, for close to 10, 12 years. And so I was also in Lighthouse at the same time because I joined Lighthouse. It was kind of weird. I'm working I'm out with Lighthouse, and then the next night I'm singing at a local bar. So it's just what you do, you know?
Okay, so before you joined Lighthouse and you're back singing 4 nights a week or whatever,
Yeah.
tell me what your confidence level is like as a singer. And I don't I think of you as a singer, but I don't know if you think of
Yes.
yourself more as a guitar player, singer, songwriter. How do you see yourself?
I see myself as a rhythm guitar player, accompanied. It's like a singer-songwriter, right? Ballads, everything. Like just to kind of give you an idea, right now, I think if I look in how many songs I've performed or familiar with, it's probably in around 1,400 songs
Well, if anybody goes to your
of all
website,
different genres.
they can see the
Yeah,
list, which is like
yeah.
ridiculous.
And that's not even the list. Like there's other things I didn't put in there because it's just so much, right?
Yeah.
But that was the beauty of playing the bar scene because you got to learn a lot of cover songs. You do your own music, but you do tons of covers and of all genres because everybody has different tastes and flavors, and so you have to appeal to your audience, right? And so, yeah, I mean that was
So when you decide
it
to
was
get out of the business, what's your confidence level in your own ability as a musician singer?
Oh, it was high, but I was just frustrated and tired because
Okay.
nothing was happening. The wheels were spinning and nothing was happening. I go, okay, this is no good. I here I am at 23 years of age, and my family's wanting to know if I'm going to get a real job. Right. And, my girlfriend is so patient. She's a beautiful soul, and I think maybe I should stop pretending or whatever, thinking that nothing, anything's going to happen. So then that's when I stopped. But I stayed in touch with the guys in the band. Like we had a co-writing relationship for decades beyond that. But I just did the job, but then I was getting musically lonesome because I was just doing weddings and back in the folk group church thing again. I went, it's not enough for me. And so,
In
yeah.
'92, you get I
Hmm.
don't know, you get a visit or a phone call from members of Lighthouse.
Yeah.
What is that like for you? What does that do
Well,
to
it was
you?
Well, it's kind of funny. So Mako, what happened was, so I'm playing in this bar pub thing, right? And before I got asked to play at the main bar pub, but so in that part-time bar pub, as fate would have it, it's a lot of fate. There was a gentleman who came in there who knew a friend of mine who was married to the sister-in-law, and his name was Tickner. Last name was Tickner. His brother Tim Tickner worked in Toronto at a major recording studio and did all kinds of jingles and commercials, and actually worked with Ian Thomas and the Boomers. So anyway, how that happened was he said, "Hey, you're a pretty good little singer." I said, "Thank you." He says, "You should be singing on commercials. How about I get you in touch with a buddy of mine?" I said, "Okay, sure, no problem." So his brother brought me in, and I did a Labatt Blue commercial. And then while I was doing that, I also met with Ken Tobias. Another person came in there, and they wanted to invest in me as doing a demo, and so they gave me a bunch of money.
So it just
And I
happened
met
like all in one day?
No, this is just on the course of a year that I was
Oh, okay,
playing
okay.
at this one other bar. So these experiences happened. People who came in and they liked what I did and saw some potential or whatever. And so one lent me some money, and I met up with Ken Tobias, and we did a 5-song EP with some great musicians. And so what I did was I started building a demo reel. So I put that on it, and then with the commercial work that I started doing, um, and then I joined ACTRA as time went on with commercials. I kept building my repertoire and resume. And then what I did was I went and I knocked on doors of all the production houses in Toronto and I introduced myself. And so how the Lighthouse connection happened again, outside of Skip, the connection with Skip, is I was also singing commercials for Skip way after the fact, like in 86, 87. Then Ken Tobias and this sort of thing. And then one of the production houses I knocked on was Harris Cole Wild. Cole being Ralph Cole, the guitar player from Lighthouse. And so I knocked on the door and I said, hi, nice to meet you. My name is Dan Clancy. And I handed him my demo reel. And I said, if anything comes up, you think that I'd be really appreciative. And so he said, well, we just did this. We're doing some packages with Molson now. And he said, we just did this one. And I said, well, I could sing that. And as fate would have it, he said, well, maybe we'll give you a call. So he did give me a call. And about 3 weeks later, I ended up singing All Right Now by Paul Rogers and Free on a Molson Canadian commercial, big red cushy chair. That was my first big commercial. And so then I got in the commercial world and I met Neil Donnell and all these guys, Doug Vardy, all the guys who are, anybody and everybody, Amy Sky, Mark Jordan. They were all singing, Elaine Overholt. They were all singing in the community. So I became part of that singing community. So so that was going on as I was working at the bars. And then I also was doing a lot of writing, and I wrote a theme song for the Toronto Rock lacrosse team, and then that got played. And then they asked me if I'd sing the anthems at Toronto Rock games, and yes, I did that. I, I drive into Toronto, sing the anthems for the lacrosse game, get in my car, and drive back to the pub to make it on time for downbeat at 9 o'clock. I did that for about 3 or 4 years. As I was in Lighthouse, because so I had now a relationship with Skip Prokop and Ralph Cole. And so what happened was when Bobby got sick, when the band got together again in 1991, by a gentleman who called from Calgary, wanted them to do the Calgary Stampede. They did that, but when they came back after the Stampede, Bobby was really not well. He was very ill at the time, and so Skip and Ralph both recommended for Paul and Brenda Hoffert to come to the bar that I was playing at in Oshawa and see what they thought. And so they did. They stayed and they introduced themselves to me and they offered me the job of being the replacement for Bobby in Lighthouse. And that was it. My first job was Canada Day, 1992, in London, Ontario.
Were there rehearsals?
Yes, yes, there were. So Skip, because what Skip did was Skip and I kept in touch with each other, and we were writing a little bit. And Skip had written a bunch of new songs, and he said, "Danny, I want you to learn these songs, and you come to rehearsal. The band's going to be there." So that was my first introduction to the whole band. There was like 10 guys in the room, and Skip put a cassette recorder in the middle of the room, played the cassette, and I just sang against the cassette. And then all the guys like Russ Little, um, Steve Kennedy, all these amazing, incredible musicians that I've admired for decades, and Ralph Cole, Paul Hoffert, they all said, "Okay, yeah, yeah, you're our guy." So that was kind of it. So Skip was the one who kind of was preparing me for it.
And when you go into a situation like that, do you what are
Mm.
you thinking? Like, are you thinking I got this, or like I don't
Yeah.
know how you think in terms of such an opportunity?
Yeah, I was really comfortable in my own skin because I trusted my voice, and I would just do how I felt. Didn't really get nervous. I was in awe of work, and I still am working with musicians. That's just my nature. Um, and I'm comfortable to do anything. Like I said earlier, Mako, it's like I'll say yes, and I'll figure out how to do it, and then I'll do my best. And if that's good enough, that's great. If it's not, I'll work a little harder. You know.
The studio work that you did for commercials and things, how
Mhm.
familiar were you with the studio?
Oh, well, there was a number of studios. So depending on the jingle house production company
Sorry,
you're
but I
working
meant
for.
more like in general, like just being in the studio and working in the studio. How comfortable were
Oh,
you with that?
fine, perfect. Yeah, just put the headphones on, and I really got to befriend all the engineers. And basically, the producer would be back in the thing, and you wouldn't have much time. I mean,
Right, right.
the most commercials you'd have 15 minutes to get your thing done, and you had to nail it. So, but I embraced the challenge. Like I love the challenge of that. And I think, and most of us in that community, like Doug Vardy and Neil Donnell, and Shauna Jackson, and just all, and everybody, we love and we're all so close. We all pull for each other. And that's what I liked about that community, the jingle community. There was no backstabbing or anything like that at all. It was all, we'd all show up for the auditions. Hey, morning, Fred. Good morning, Ralph.
Punch the clock in.
Yeah, yeah, push clock in, and but then we were nice to each other. We weren't hard on one another, right? We were, whoever got it, they got the phone call, and you go in and do, Joel. Yeah, you just go in and do it, and so those were fun times. Yeah, I love all those people, and I still get a chance to see them once in a while, which is nice.
You mentioned Saga, and I had the pleasure of interviewing
Mm.
Michael Sadler, and he was
Oh,
telling
Michael's
me,
awesome.
yeah, but he was telling me like he doesn't do warm ups, and his voice hasn't changed, and so
No.
when did you realize, and I don't know if you have realized, but when your
Mhm.
voice is an instrument and that it doesn't always function the same way, when did you realize that it was, definitely an instrument and something you had to take care of?
Well, probably the first time I lost my voice or got sick with a sore throat, that sort of thing, right? But me, my whole philosophy has always been like this, Mako. It's you're going to get sick. You just try and improvise and adapt. If your voice is gone, obviously you can't sing. Because I remember working through the club scene, there would be nights where I'd sound like Rod Stewart chewing glass. You know what I mean? Where, I
Right.
mean, no offense to Rod Stewart, he's amazing. But I just found where I couldn't talk, but I could sing, which was weird. You know what I mean? So you find a way to kind of get around certain things, right? And there have been times where I've struggled, but if it's like anybody, it's a you, the most important thing that I even helped other students with who I worked with and taught vocally was just try your best to relax. Try to relax. Try not to let the pressure of the what you're experiencing tighten you up. You got to relax. Try and be open, and everybody's different. I found myself more as a workman kind of thing. Okay, roll up your sleeves and do the work and work through whatever you're dealing with. You know what I mean? And don't bring that to the table. Other people everybody's different. I think everybody's different how they approach that. I'm not sure about Michael. I never really talked to Mike about this, but I love talking to singers about, hey, when you lose your voice or if you're struggling, what's your approach? Like,
Do you
it's
do
it's an
warm-ups?
interesting thing. No, no. Well, no, not for forever. And once, no, I don't. Which is terrible. Sometimes what I'll do though is this. If I'm now in the last, say, 4 or 5 years, if I'm going to do a gig with someone who I'm not 100% comfortable with all the songs, I'll sing a couple things in the car. Like I'll have my iPod. I have an iPod, so I put the playlists on and I'll just go through it just to kind of see how things are going. Do I know that one? Yeah, I'm okay with that. But generally speaking, no, I just show up and I don't do warm-ups before the show. I just go cold and yeah, I've been very fortunate that way. Um,
You
yeah,
have
the
your
leather lungs.
you have your own band. Um,
Yes.
do you write your own songs?
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
I do.
Is
Yeah,
that
I do.
something that you continually do? How does that happen?
Yeah, it comes by inspiration. Mainly, I do things when I'm inspired, and I had a very good friend, collaborator, Bob Johnson, Georgie Fab, we used to call him. He's from Hamilton. He was in the band Suspect with me and with Skip Prokoph's band, and I miss him dearly. He passed away a few years ago, and he and I were really close and did a lot of songwriting together. But I still continue to do my own. I've got about 14, 15 songs collecting digital dust at the moment in their various configurations. But I've and great musicians who are playing on it for me, and I'm going to release them, one at a time. Put them up on the website, maybe just to see if I can get people interested or not. But I mainly don't do it for anyone else other than for myself. I just do it for my own gratification and a way to express ideas and thoughts and how I'm experiencing life, that kind of thing.
I wonder,
So,
and I'm sure I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask anyways.
sure.
You sing for Pretzel Logic and Chicago Transit to, and I don't know if they're tribute bands because they have all these different terminologies, but bands who play other bands' music. You play for Lighthouse, which is an institution in Canada. You have your own solo band. Do you treat those gigs differently in any way?
I'm just me. I just show up. But what I try to do with each of them is I have, because I have such an elaborate catalog of music, I try if I can. to emulate a little bit of what the original vocalist would do vocal wise. So if I'm doing a song, say for example, by Michael McDonald, he's got that sort of sound, that sort of thing.
Right.
Minute by minute, hey, yeah. You do those things, right? Just to kind of make it sort of fun for the audience.
Yeah.
They say, go, oh, that's really cool. It sounds like that. Or Donald Fagen, it's a little more like this kind of a thing. You know what I mean? So I like to play with my voice, like, um, musically. Brian, try and sound like Brian Adams. If I do Brian Adams songs, when we do Lighthouse things, once in a while I'll like to go tired. Like I like to do something that Bobby would do because people they want to hear a little bit of Bob McBride. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I mean,
And
knowing
and I do
that,
I do it I do it out of me personally as a singer. I do it out of love and respect and for each of those artists.
I mean,
And also, yeah, sorry.
watching Pretzel Logic, I mean, I certainly felt that and your ability to do that.
Oh,
I can't imagine a lot of singers can do that. You know what I mean? To be able
mm,
to sound like Mike McDonald,
yeah.
or somebody else,
Well,
and that certainly came through.
well, thank you very much because I kind of that's sort of my a badge of honor I carry, sort of kind of a vocal chameleon. Like, people, and it worked out with commercials too sometimes because they say, okay, we want you to sound like this. I say, okay, no problem. And so I go into that just from my training, my work in the trenches, playing in the bar scene for so many years. And then it's just my natural sort of thing that I like to do that because I think the audience, like sometimes they don't know, but they're hearing it and it makes them feel, oh boy, that sounds just like the original. And that's what I want them to feel because then what that does for me, Mako, is it brings back their memories of that music. The closer I can sound to the original, the more it makes people feel what they felt when they first heard those songs and the times and the joy that they had, or the sadness, whatever emotion they were feeling at the time when they first heard those songs. So that's what I kind of like to do. I kind of like to try and tap into that as much as I can.
So, some oftentimes other musicians might talk about tribute bands in a negative way because it's a competition, and unfortunately, and it seems like a lot of bars now hire mainly covers and tribute bands as opposed to original
Mhm.
bands. So I think there's a bit of a
Mhm.
resentment. But how do you view tribute bands? I guess it's a challenge to you. I think you just kind of express how you felt about it. But
Well, I think tribute bands right now basically are the new. Um, it's a new industry, right? Over the last 10 years, and I think the Classic Albums Live series and the Genes and Classic series basically kind of gave genesis to a lot of that at the time when that first came out 10, 15 years ago. I think people go, hey, you know what? There's a band out there. We should maybe do a tribute to them. And
mm,
there is a huge audience out there for people who love to hear the bands or at least hear the music done as closely to the original as possible and paying tribute to that. So for most of us musicians who are looking for work, it's a great avenue for us to sort of tap into. Hence the reason why I'm doing it. And I was actually asked if I might join a couple of other tribute bands just because of the nature of my ability to sound like other people,
right.
right? But I just don't have the time, so I just had to say sorry. I just can't do it at the right now. I can't. But I think as far as tribute bands go, it pays homage to, and it's also good for the original bands because it keeps that band in the heads and eyes and ears of their faithful fans. So they'll go out to see the tribute, but they'll also go out to see the original band, which is kind of cool.
But as a band leader of your own band, is it
Yes.
frustrating in a way? Like you have these songs that you wrote yourself that
Hmm.
would be more difficult to get an audience to listen to than if my, you're
Yeah,
not going
no,
to
I know
pull it
what you
out at a
mean. And
pretzel
no,
logic gig.
but you know what? It's not offensive to me in any way, shape, or form. Because for Mako, for me, for my own music, when I started doing that, I would play the local clubs and like we do our own music in the band and stuff like that. And I still do a couple of those songs. But what I'll do is I'll slip them in between a Bruce Springsteen song and a whatever song. So I'll have maybe three or four of my own songs
Right.
in a set list. And people don't even know. Like I won't even announce that it's my song. I'll just do the song, and then people really, oh, that's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for me, it's just like I say, it's more for my own pleasure. I don't look at it, oh, I need to have a record out there or what. No, I'm fine. And if something happened, I mean, that would be wonderful. If someone wanted to record one of my songs and it did something, I'd be flattered, honored, and but if it didn't happen, that's okay. It's for me, it's more for my own fun, you know?
Okay, so the other thing you got
So,
involved in was teaching the business of music
hmm
at Durham College. Tell me how
hmm
that happened and why you did that.
How that happened was I was approached by, okay, so remember I mentioned to you that I did the Toronto Rock
Yes.
theme song for the professional lacrosse team out of Toronto. And then I knew all the lacrosse, but I played lacrosse since I was 12. So, and I stopped playing when I was like 49 because everything hurt too much. But, but anyway, so I coached we have three boys, my wife and I, and they played hockey and lacrosse. And I coached them in lacrosse for 14, 15 years, all three of them in different divisions of what they did, as well as I was playing. So music and sports has always been a big thing for me. So one of our sons who I was coaching, one of the players on that team, his mother was a professor in a program director at Durham College. And she knew I was a musician and I was in Lighthouse and I was playing local clubs and I was singing on commercial. I was doing the Toronto Rock and all of these other things. She says, Dan, do you think you would ever want to teach part time up at Durham College? And I said, sure. I said, yes. Right.
As you normally do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yes. And juggling all these balls. And so, anyway, so she was a wonderful lady. One of her name is Joanne Hill, and she's still teaching there. Um, so, brought me into the program. I started teaching part time and was mentored a little bit by another professor up there. Um, um, and Basically, I gained more teaching, more courses were given to me, and then I sort of did that. It became almost a full-time job, right? As I was doing the other things, I was working at Lighthouse, and I was sort of trying to juggle that and all the other performance issues that I had to sort of keep in tow.
Right.
But it worked out. I had the time. I managed to make it. Sometimes you wonder, right? Sometimes you wonder, wow. You look back and you go, how did you do all that? But but you make it work, right? So anyway, that program started as a 2-year diploma program. It was called Entertainment something. I can't remember. I mentioned it earlier. Entertainment Administration. It was called. We ended up changing the name to Music Business Management, and we put a whole bunch of courses in place, and it became a 3-year diploma program through the Ministry of Ontario. So we jumped through a lot of hoops and we went and had meetings with the ministry and we expanded the program and we built a recording studio there and a whole 9 yards. And so basically they were learning about live sound, they were learning about management, they were learning about engineering, they were learning about production, they were learning about contract law, they were learning about promotion and every facet that we could think of as we put it in the program so that they were versatile enough to move from one to the other. And thankfully, a lot of those students are working in the music industry with SOCAN and CRRA and all of these organizations, and some of them with record companies, with Sony and Universal. So So it's very gratifying
Wow.
um, that some of them are now working in the industry. And so that's how that came to be. And then I was in it for 3 or 4 years, had an opportunity to take it on as a full-time position. Did the interview, didn't feel too good about the interview. And it's just one of those things, it's a passage of time. Um, so when I didn't get the full-time posting, they said, well, we can offer you a couple of part-time uh, time loads. And I went, it's okay, but thanks so much. I really appreciate it. It's just too bad because we built this huge program, but I kind of have to leave it. But
Right.
I'm just glad for the students because it's about the students. So that's kind of what happened there.
As I said, from looking at your bio at a very high level, it just seems like everything you've done makes total sense, and that this path was you had kind of planned it out, or you were ready for it when the opportunities came. What is it that you enjoy the most about what you do?
Hmm. Learning. I enjoy learning about myself, learning about the industry still on so many facets, learning about people, learning about how to help them along. Um, and so, yeah, because we're all lifelong learners, I think most of us are. It keeps us feeling connected and youthful and, like we have a purpose. And I think we all do, as long as we embrace that. But yeah, and I love making people happy or consoling people
Right.
through music. It's just it's a great gift. It's a great gift that those of us who do it and who are fortunate enough to do it should never take it for granted. It is a gift. It enriches our lives so much,
I
I think.
agree. I mean, the gratitude that you seem to have just comes through in so many different levels. It's
Thanks.
impressive.
Oh, well, thanks. I'm very I feel very blessed, and there are times, I have to admit though, there were times when I was down, really down, working in the music business, and you question, why do I have this?
Hmm.
Why am I doing this? And it's just that you get to that point sometimes, depending on what the circumstances, the situation in your life is. But those are just weak moments. Those are weak moments that sometimes come to me, but then very frequently, you're usually going to dig yourself out of those moments. I think it only happened in a big way. It happened to me maybe once, not so much when I was disenchanted with the music industry and tired of it, but a little bit later on, and I just wondered and questioned it. But then the answer was right there. Well, look at how happy you're making people, or how much you're helping others feel good and forget some of the things that they're not happy about.
Do you
You know what
remember
I
the
mean?
first time you realized that? When something came to you and like or somebody came to you and then you realized what a difference you made in someone's life?
Oh, quite frequently, really a lot, Mako, because people would come up to you all the time and say, thank you for playing that song because that was used at my dad's funeral and he loved that song. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so I would experience that a lot, and a lot of musicians do. We experience that where people come up and they say, "I really like what you did, and thanks so much for doing that." That brought back, oh, I remember I met my best buddy. We partied singing that song. Thanks so much for doing that. That was awesome. So there's so many of those experiences, and not just on the bar scene or on the light, even the lighthouse. Like, we play a show, and at the end, we like to bow and show our appreciation. And then I like to go to the front of the stage and sometimes jump off the stage down and just shake hands. And sometimes there's friends there, and there's other people come up to you and go, you played at our high school. And I said, oh, well, I wasn't there when they played in the high school, but I was in high school. but, but but like they remember and they thank you for doing that song. Oh, that was so great you did that song, and it brought back such great memories. And so I constantly experience that. Even when I take my own band or duo or solo act singing somewhere, someone will come up to you or after you're walking down through and they'll say, wow, thank you for doing that song, or can you do this song? And I'll go, oh yeah, sure. So
It
yeah,
is a gift, and good for
it
you for
is.
having that gift. And my
Oh,
final
thank you.
question to you is that kid who started singing in the choir at age 6 to
Hmm.
where you are now. Tell me
Yes.
about the passion that you have for music.
Boy, oh boy. Sometimes it's overwhelming. Like just thinking about it now, like if I think about a song, say for example, that I sang when I was 5 and 6, like I sang solo, it was in Latin. And I still sing Latin, right? So once in a while, depending on what I'm called to do or asked to do. But I've always had that sort of passion for singing. Yeah. And I love the camaraderie, the team aspect of being in a band. See, because I play hockey and lacrosse, and I've done it all through my life growing up as a kid, and our kids did it, and music was always around. But so I look at music and what that does as a team thing. Even when I'm by myself, the team is the people you're performing for. It's that whole vibe that you're trying to create, right? And so if you're doing a duo, then it's the two of you and you're doing that and you're embracing all of the experience. If it's trio, it's more. If it's 5 people, it's more. If it's like 10 people, like in Lighthouse, we're all sort of feeling it, and then we're trying to embrace the audience with that vibe, and that's what I love. It's alive. It's quite spectacular.
It certainly is. I really enjoyed watching you perform, and when I saw you, I said, "I'm going to talk to this guy." So thank you so much for responding. I'm very grateful.
Oh, well, thank you, Marco. It's been a pleasure. I really, really appreciate your time. Thank so much.
Thank you.